Hi everyone, I played this clip the other day of Jim Jordan, Representative Jim Jordan in America, questioning Robert Mueller of the FBI and his report, this Russiagate report, and questioning him mostly about Joseph Mifsud, this mysterious professor that started this whole affair off. I'm going to play all of this 5 minutes again, just to give you a catch up on why this is so important, how damning a testimony it was, and just why we should care in the UK. But I also want to then go on to show other clips to just show how bad our Mockingbird media, their lack of coverage of it has been. Take a look at this.
Director, the FBI interviewed Joseph Mifsud on February 10th, 2017. In that interview, Mr. Mifsud lied. You point this out on page 193, volume 1. Mifsud denied. Mifsud also falsely stated. In addition, Mifsud omitted. 3 times he lied to the FBI, yet you didn't charge him with the crime.
Excuse me, did you say one? I'm sorry, did you say 193?
Volume 1, 193. He lied 3 times. You pointed out in the report. Why didn't you charge him with the crime?
I can't get into internal deliberations with regard who would or would not be
Charge a lot of other people for making false statements. Let's remember this. In 2016, the FBI did something they probably haven't done before. They spied on 2 American citizens associated with a presidential campaign, George Papadopoulos and Carter Page. With Carter Page, they went to the FISA court. They used the now famous dossier as part of the reason they were able to get the warrant and spy on Carter Page for a better part of a year. With Mr. Papadopoulos, they didn't go to the court. They used human sources. All kinds of, from about the moment Papadopoulos joins the Trump campaign, you got all these people all around the world starting to swirl around him. Names like Halper, Downer, Mifsud, Thompson, meeting in Rome, London, all kinds of places. The FBI even sent a lady posing as somebody else, went by the name Azra Turk, even dispatched her to London to spy on Mr. Papadopoulos. In one of these meetings, Mr. Papadopoulos is talking to a foreign diplomat, and he tells the diplomat, Russians have dirt on Clinton. That diplomat then contacts the FBI, and the FBI opens an investigation based on that fact. You point this out on page 1 of the report. July 31st, 2016, they open the investigation based on that piece of information. Diplomat tells Papadopoulos, Papadopoulos tells the diplomat, Russians have dirt on Clinton. Diplomat tells the FBI. What I'm wondering is, who told Papadopoulos? How'd he find out?
I can't get into the evidentiary file.
Yes, you can, because you wrote about it. You gave us the answer. Page 192 of the report, you tell us who told him. Joseph Mifsud. Joseph Mifsud's a guy who told Papadopoulos. The mysterious professor who lives in Rome and London, teaches in 2 different universities. This is the guy who told Papadopoulos. He's the guy who starts it all. And when the FBI interviews him, he lies 3 times, and yet you don't charge him with a crime. You charge Rick Gates for false statements. You charge Paul Manafort for false statements. You charge Michael Cohen with false statements. You charge Michael Flynn, a 3-star general, with false statements. But the guy who puts the country through this whole saga, starts it all for 3 years we've lived this now, he lies, and you guys don't charge him. And I'm curious as to why.
Well, I can't get into it, and it's obvious, I think, that we can't get into charging decisions.
When the FBI interviewed him in February, FBI interviews him in February, when the special counsel's office interviewed Mifsud, did he lie to you guys too?
Can't get into that.
Did you interview Mifsud?
Can't get into that.
Is Mifsud Western intelligence or Russian intelligence?
Can't get into that.
A lot of things you can't get into. What's interesting, you can charge 13 Russians no one's ever heard of, no one's ever seen, no one's ever going to hear of them, no one's ever going to see them. You can charge them. You can charge all kinds of people who are around the president with false statements. But the guy who launches the guy who puts this whole story in motion, you can't charge him. I think that's amazing.
I'm not certain I agree with your characterizations.
Well, I'm reading from your report. Mifsud told Papadopoulos. Papadopoulos tells the diplomat tells the FBI opens the investigation July 31st, 2016, and here we are 3 years later, July of 2019, the country's been put through this, and the central figure who launches it all lies to us and you guys don't hunt him down and interview him again, and you don't charge him with a crime. Now, here's the good news. Here's the good news. The president was falsely accused of conspiracy. The FBI does a 10-month investigation, and James Comey, when we deposed him a year ago, told us at that point they had nothing. You do a 22-month investigation. At the end of that 22 months, you find no conspiracy. And what's the Democrats want to do? They want to keep investigating. They want to keep going. Maybe a better course of action, is to figure out how the false accusation started. Maybe it's to go back and actually figure out why Joseph Mifsud was lying to the FBI. And here's the good news. Here's the good news. That's exactly what Bill Barr's doing. And thank goodness for that. That's exactly what the Attorney General and John Durham are doing. They're going to find out why we went through this three-year saga and get to the bottom of it.
That was epic. That was. It was absolutely epic. Word has it that it was Sean Hannity has been prepping a few of them on their questioning of Mueller. Now, I and others covering this story from the very start have honestly been screaming that it's a conspiracy that's been born in the United Kingdom ever since I can remember. You know, with Joseph Mifsud and all these dodgy people. All roads were leading back to London. You know, this mysterious Joseph Mifsud, this professor, you know, with dodgy ties to MI6 and God knows who, and dodgy diplomats that started it all, and they've got ties to heads of MI6, and dodgy dossiers compiled by people in MI6, you know, spies in MI6, and even dodgier spies connected to them with dodgier D notice on. You can see it's a conspiracy that's born in the United Kingdom. And that was a damning testimony, wasn't it? It's obvious, surely now, that this was all born in the United Kingdom, and it's all got to do with Pablo Mueller and Sergei Skripal, remember, who was Pablo Miller's, he was Sergei Skripal's handler. There was a D notice on him, there's a D notice on Christopher Steele. This is too much of a coincidence for these stories not to be connected. I've been saying that from the very beginning. Surely now the cat's out of the bag, right? Well, not really so much, because here's what the BBC said about it. The BBC just said, yeah, we'll post it, but only the last 47 seconds. They just posted the last 47 seconds. And if you go down to the quotes on the comments on this, on YouTube, by the way, look at this. Top comments. Why don't you post the whole 6 minutes exchange? Why don't you post the whole 6 minutes? They missed all the good stuff to make this ridiculous. This is a Mockingbird media. You know, they're not here to inform you. That's meant to be one of the BBC's remits, to inform you. They're not informing you here. This is governmental PR. The media, the silence on this from the media has been deafening now. But like I say, there's so much more than just that one clip. Let's play you another one. This is incredible. This is Devin Nunes questioning Mueller. Take a look.
Let's continue with the opening of the investigation supposedly on July 31st, 2016. The investigation was not opened based on an official product from Five Eyes Intelligence, but based on a rumor conveyed by Alexander Downer. On Volume 1, page 89, your report describes him blandly as a representative of a foreign government. But he was actually a long-time Australian politician, not a military or intelligence official, who had previously arranged a $25 million donation to the Clinton Foundation and has previous ties to Dearlove. So Downer conveys a rumor he supposedly heard about a conversation between Papadopoulos and Joseph Mifsud. James Comey has publicly called Mifsud a Russian agent.
So James Comey, the guy who was his predecessor, called Mifsud a Russian agent. It gets worse. Honestly, this is incredible that nobody in the UK is talking about this. I'll get to that in a minute.
Yet your report does not refer to Mifsud as a Russian agent. Mifsud has extensive contacts with Western governments and the FBI. For example, there is a recent photo of him standing next to Boris Johnson, the new Prime Minister of Great Britain. What we're trying to figure out here, Mr. Mueller, is if our NATO allies or Boris Johnson have been compromised.
Did you hear that? What we're trying to find out here is if our NATO allies or Boris Johnson, our Prime Minister, has been compromised. That is a United States congressman. He sits on the Senate Intelligence Committee, I believe, Devin Nunes. And he's asking the director of the FBI if the Prime Minister of this country is compromised by Russia. Take a listen again.
Mifsud is a Russian agent. Mifsud has extensive contacts with Western governments and the FBI. For example, there is a recent photo of him standing next to Boris Johnson, the new Prime Minister of Great Britain. What we're trying to figure out here, Mr. Mueller, is if our NATO allies or Boris Johnson have been compromised. So we're trying to figure out, Comey says Mifsud is a Russian agent, you do not. So do you stand by what's in the report?
I'd stand by that which is in the report and not so necessarily with that which is not in the report.
I want to return to Mr. Downer. He denies that Papadopoulos mentioned anything to him about Hillary Clinton's emails. And in fact, Mifsud denies mentioning to them that to Papadopoulos. He denies that Papadopoulos mentioned anything to him about Hillary Clinton's emails. And in fact, Mifsud denies mentioning them to Papadopoulos in the first place. So how does the FBI know to continually ask Papadopoulos about Clinton's emails for the rest of 2016? Even more strangely, your sentencing memo on Papadopoulos blames him for hindering the FBI's ability to potentially detain or arrest Mifsud. But the truth is, Mifsud waltzed in and out of the United States in December 2016. The US media could find him, the Italian press found him, and he's a supposed Russian agent at the epicenter of the purported collusion conspiracy. He's the guy who knows about Hillary Clinton's emails and that the Russians have them. But the FBI failed to question him for a half a year after officially opening the investigation. And then according to Volume 1, page 193 of your report, once Mifsud finally was questioned, he made false statements to the FBI. But you declined to charge him. Is that correct? You did not indict Mr. Mifsud?
I'm not going to speak to the series of happenings as you articulated them.
He won't even admit that he didn't that he didn't charge Mifsud. He won't even say he didn't charge Mifsud.
You did not indict Mr. Mifsud.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
Pardon?
You did not indict Mr. Mifsud.
True.
Oh, he finally does. But you can see that's a US congressman in the middle of that. And he was saying, Boris Johnson's compromised here. We need to find out. He was asking the former director of the FBI, I assume he's retired now that the investigation has finished and concluded. But he's asking the director of the FBI, the chief of this report, if our prime minister in this country is compromised. Look at this. I did a Google search on it. The only two articles I can find with Boris Johnson compromised in there, and Devin Nunes for good measure, were these two. One from the Mirror, which basically tries to make out, look at this, that Mifsud is still a Russian. It says here, his photo with Mifsud, the Kremlin-linked professor. It says Kremlin-linked professor there in that tweet. That's what the Mirror are trying to highlight there, that he's a Kremlin-linked. If he was Kremlin-linked, geniuses in the media, at the Mirror, if he was Kremlin-linked, why, after lying 3 times to the FBI, did the FBI not indict him? They indicted 12 Russians based on some Bernie memes. Some memes that of Bernie in LGBTQ colours. And Satan arm wrestling God. They arrested those 12 guys, but not the one guy who lied to the FBI 3 times, who started this all, who they say in the Mirror here is a Kremlin-linked professor. The other article was in the Metro, a free paper in the UK, a free paper. Top US politician asked if Boris Johnson could have been compromised by a Russian spy, making out that it was a crazy nutman. He's a crazy nutman for asking this. Why is he asking this? And you can see there the comments. This Yankee's a real Reds under the bed loony. No! Of course, they have framed it in the wrong way in the media. Devin Nunes there was trying to point out the whole stupidity of calling him a Russian spy, of Comey calling him a Russian spy, the FBI director, the previous FBI director calling him a Russian spy, when obviously he's not. Because otherwise, surely he would have been indicted and arrested as well, along with the 12 Russians that were responsible for those Bernie memes and God arm wrestling Satan. He's trying to point out the stupidity of it all, and the media don't get it. Do you think that they don't get it on purpose? Do you think that they really suck this bad, or do you think that maybe they've been told they can't cover this? I know which one I'm thinking. What more proof do you need after seeing that we don't have an operating fourth estate in this country? Maybe this will convince you.
Mr. Mueller, I want to focus.
I want to just mention here that Mueller was remember, he was asked, I think it was by Ralph Nader, the rabid Russiagate Ralph Nader, about exoneration. And he said, no, didn't fully exonerate Donald Trump from from trying to interfere in an investigation of which there was no guilt at all. It's a witch hunt. Trump was right about it. But he said exonerate, didn't he? And it was all about exoneration that he made the report about. But that's a bit strange, isn't it? Exonerate. A strange thing to say. The media jumped on it. Let me just show you this. The media jumped on it, look. Here's The Guardian, GCHQ's mouthpiece. Mueller insists his report did not exonerate Trump on obstruction charges. Here's The Telegraph. Robert Mueller defends meddling inquiry, saying he did not exonerate Trump. They're all about not exonerating him, but that's a bit strange, isn't it? It's a bit strange. Yes, it is. And here's why. It's something else that the media in this country haven't picked up on at all.
Mr. Mueller, I want to focus on one word in your report. It's the second to the last word in the report. It's exonerate. The report states, accordingly, while this report does not conclude that the president committed a crime, it does not exonerate him. Now, in the judiciary hearing, in your prior testimony, you've already agreed with Mr. Radcliffe that exonerate is not a legal term, that there is not a legal test for this. So I have a question for you, Mr. Mueller. Mr. Mueller, does the Attorney General...
I love this. I've got to stop this. I love this. There's a bit in A Few Good Men where Tom Cruise, the actor, starts saying, well, it's in the Navy field menu. Is code red in there? Oh, well, here's the Army manual. Is code red in there? And he does it. This is a brilliant... This is my this is his A Few Good Men moment, in my opinion. Let's take it back a second.
For you, Mr. Mueller. Mr. Mueller, does the Attorney General have the power or authority to exonerate? Now, what I'm putting up here is the United States Code. This is where the Attorney General gets his power, and the Constitution, and the annotated cases of these, which we've searched. We even went to your law school, because I went to Case Western, but I thought maybe your law school teaches it differently, and we got the criminal law textbook from your law school. Mr. Mueller, nowhere in these, because we had them scanned, is there a process or description on exonerate. There's no office of exoneration at the Attorney General's office. There's no certificate at the bottom of his desk. Mr. Mueller, would you agree with me that the Attorney General does not have the power to exonerate?
I'm going to pass on that.
He's going to pass on whether the Attorney General has the power to exonerate.
Mr. Mueller, I want to focus on one.
He's going to pass on whether the Attorney General has... He's going to pass on whether there's an office of exoneration.
Word in your report. It's a... Nowhere in these, because we had them scanned, is there a process or description on exonerate. There's no office of exoneration at the Attorney General's office. There's no certificate at the bottom of his desk. Mr. Mueller, would you agree with me that the Attorney General does not have the power to exonerate?
I'm going to pass on that.
So he's going to pass on, I suppose he would pass as well as to whether the Attorney General has an office of exoneration. It really is a joke. And the reason it's a joke was because exonerate, of course, is strange. It's flipping the judicial process on its head. Because then, if you've got to exonerate people, that means that there's a presumption of guilt. And there's no need for exonerate, since in law there's a presumption of, you got it, innocence. Mr. Ratcliffe explains here, and he goes on, and this is even further damning as to why exonerating would invert the burden of proof in America. This is fantastic. Take a look.
You can't, time is short. I've got 5 minutes. Let's just leave it at you can't find it, because I'll tell you why. It doesn't exist. The special counsel's job, nowhere does it say that you were to conclusively determine Donald Trump's innocence, or that the special counsel report should determine.
Just let me take my pic and my image away just for a second. You can see that this is a feed from MSNBC. Look at this. It says breaking news. Mueller report does not conclude that the president committed a crime. It also doesn't exonerate him. So even on the caption, they're focusing on that word exonerate. Honestly, it's incredible the way the Mockingbird media in America works, let alone the fact that our media over here have ignored all of this. I'm going to play this from the start. Sorry for interrupting so much, but this is just so ridiculous how the media are not covering it in this country.
You can't, time is short. I've got 5 minutes. Let's just leave it at you can't find it, because I'll tell you why. It doesn't exist. The special counsel's job, nowhere does it say that you were to conclusively determine Donald Trump's innocence, or that the special counsel report should determine whether or not to exonerate him. It's not in any of the documents. It's not in your appointment order. It's not in the special counsel regulations. It's not in the OLC opinions. It's not in the Justice Manual, and it's not in the principles of federal prosecution. Nowhere do those words appear together, because respectfully, Director, it was not the special counsel's job to conclusively determine Donald Trump's innocence or to exonerate him, because the bedrock principle of our justice system is a presumption of innocence. It exists for everyone. Everyone is entitled to it, including sitting presidents. And because there is a presumption of innocence, prosecutors never, ever need to conclusively determine it. Now, Director, the special counsel applied this inverted burden of proof that I can't find, and you said doesn't exist anywhere in the department policies, and you used it to write a report. And the very first line of your report, says, and as you read this morning, it authorizes the special counsel to provide the Attorney General with a confidential report explaining the prosecution or declination decisions reached by the special counsel. That's the very first word of your report, right?
That's correct.
Here's the problem, Director. The special counsel didn't do that. On volume 1, you did. On volume 2, with respect to potential obstruction of justice, the special counsel made neither a prosecution decision or a declination decision. You made no decision. You told us this morning and in your report that you made no determination. So respectfully, Director, you didn't follow the special counsel regulations. It clearly says, write a confidential report about decisions reached. Nowhere in here does it say, write a report about decisions that weren't reached. You wrote 180 pages about decisions that weren't reached, about potential crimes that weren't charged or decided. And respectfully, by doing that, you managed to violate every principle and the most sacred of traditions about prosecutors not offering extra prosecutorial analysis about potential crimes that aren't charged. So Americans need to know this as they listen to the Democrats and socialists on the other side of the aisle, as they do dramatic readings from this report, that volume 2 of this report was not authorized under the law to be written. It was written to a legal standard that does not exist at the Justice Department. And it was written in violation of every DOJ principle about extra prosecutorial commentary. I agree with the chairman this morning when he said Donald Trump is not above the law. He's not. But he damn sure shouldn't be below the law, which is where volume 2 of this report puts him.
You're damn right, it's below the law. It wasn't written to any legal standard in the United States, and that was authored by the director of the FBI, the one person who should really know about all these things. So, again, the media in this country not talking about that at all must tell you that they are Mockingbird media. They are basically doing what they're told and writing what they're told and nothing else. You know, they're quiet. They're quiet about the fact that the report wasn't even written to any legal standard in America. They're quiet on the fact that the one guy who lied 3 times to the FBI hasn't been charged. The one guy who started this all. The one guy that the media were trying to point, oh, he's Kremlin backed. Really? If he's Kremlin linked, why wasn't he charged? Answer me that. And what about Christopher Steele, by the way? Christopher Steele, you know, he's the author of the Steele dossier. The author of the Steele dossier, the salacious dossier, you know, the PP type dossier, which was complete and utter tosh. What about him? Did he come up much? Like I say, I've only seen probably about an hour and a half, 2 hours so far of this hearing. It's probably more. I'll get to it. This is Matt Staub, I think his name is. Take a listen to this. He questions Mueller about Christopher Steele quite heavily.
Okay, you stated in your opening statement that you would not get into the details of the Steele dossier. However, multiple times in Volume 2 on page 23, 27, and 28, you mentioned the unverified allegations. How long did it take you to reach the conclusion that it was unverified?
I'm not going to speak to that.
It's actually in your report multiple times that it's unverified, and you're telling me that you're not willing to tell us how you came to the conclusion that it was unverified.
He's not going to tell anybody how he knows that the Steele dossier is BS. He's not going to tell them that. He's going to say, we know it's BS, we're not going to tell you that. Why not? Why not?
True.
When did you become aware that the unverified Steele dossier was included in the FISA application to spy on Carter Page?
I'm sorry, what was he?
Now he pretends not to know the question, to try and not to hear the question, to try and waste a few seconds.
What was the question?
Because they all have a 5-minute time limit, each one of these questioners do.
When did you become aware that the unverified Steele dossier was included in the FISA application to spy on Carter Page?
I'm not going to speak to that.
Not going to speak to that either.
Your team interviewed Christopher Steele, is that correct?
Not going to get into that.
You can't.
He won't even say whether we interviewed Christopher Steele. Come on, United Kingdom media should be all over this like vultures, shouldn't they?
I said
You can't tell this committee as to whether or not you interviewed Christopher Steele in a 22-month investigation with 18 lawyers.
As I said at the outset, that is one of the investigations that is being handled by others in the Department of Justice.
Yeah, but you're here testifying about this investigation today. And I am asking you directly, did any members of your team or did you interview Christopher Steele in the course of your investigation?
And I am not going to answer that question, sir.
You had 2 years to investigate. Not once did you consider it worthy to investigate how an unverified document that was paid for by a political opponent was used to obtain a warrant to spy on the opposition political campaign. Did you do any investigation in that whatsoever?
I do not accept your characterization of what occurred.
Remember, this is paid for by Fusion GPS, who met with this Natalie Veselnitskaya, who met with Donald Trump Jr. at the Trump Tower meeting, both the day before and the day after she met with Donald Trump Jr. It stinks, this does, and the fact that our media won't talk about it just shows how co-opted they are.
What would be your characterization?
I'm not going to speak any more to it.
So you can't speak any more to it, but you're not going to agree with my characterization. Is that correct?
Yes.
The FISA application makes reference to Source One, who was Christopher Steele, the author of the Steele dossier. The FISA application says nothing Sources One's reason for conducting the research into Candidate One's ties to Russia, based on Sources One previous reporting history with FBI, whereby Source One provided reliable information to the FBI. The FBI believes Source One's reporting herein to be credible. Do you believe the FBI's representation that Source One's reporting was credible to be accurate?
I'm not going to answer that.
So you're not going to respond to any of the questions regarding Christopher Steele or your interviews with them?
Well, as I said at the outset this morning, that was one of the investigations that I could not speak to.
Well, I don't understand how, if you interviewed an individual on the purview of this investigation that you're testifying to us today, that you've closed that investigation, how that's not within your purview to tell us about that investigation and who you interviewed.
I have nothing to add.
Okay, well, I can guarantee that the American people want to know. And I'm very hopeful and glad that AG Barr is looking into this and the Inspector General is looking into this, because you're unwilling to answer the questions of the American people as it relates to the very basis of this investigation into the president and the very basis of this individual who you did interview. You're just refusing to answer those questions.
Did interview him, like you said there. He's saying he did interview Christopher Steele, but you're just refusing to answer the questions. And obviously our media don't want to talk about it either. Mr. Staub, there, I have to agree with you that the American people will want to know more about Christopher Steele. I think the United Kingdom and the people of the United Kingdom will want to know more about Christopher Steele and his involvement in this Russiagate nonsense. This 3 years of Russiagate nonsense, which has filled our airwaves non-stop, which has caused another Cold War and more McCarthyite smears of anybody who was going against the establishment. Russian, Kremlin asset. We definitely want to know, or at least I do, more about Christopher Steele and his involvement in this, especially as obviously Christopher Steele was, the man who had a D notice put upon the media, not to mention his name, as the author of the Steele dossier, and his buddy. He had a D notice on him as well. Pablo Mueller of Orbis Business Intelligence, which also had a D notice put on it, which was the company that was funded by GPS to find out this salacious material on the dossier that, of course, Christopher Steele and Pablo Mueller were contacts of Sergei Skripal, who was allegedly poisoned. The UK media's reporting on that hearing I've just shown you was a complete dereliction of duty. They have abdicated their responsibility to the Fourth Estate. It is clear to me at least, the fact that they are not reporting this the way I can. From my council flat, remember, I was high in Amsterdam while this was going on, in a coffee shop. I've seen this since I've come back. And still I can report on it better than our entire media in this country from a council flat on a budget of less than £1,000 a month. They have abdicated their responsibility to the Fourth Estate in this country. They must be under orders not to report on this. They must be. And if that's the case, then they are not the press. They are not the Fourth Estate. They are not the media, because those things are meant to hold government and power accountable. All they are right now, the media in this country, not talking about all the things that I'm talking about, all they are is governmental PR. That's it. They are treating the United Kingdom public like mushrooms, keeping them in the dark and feeding them on bullshit. And I think it's about time the people started contacting their MPs and demanding answers. Because what they've been fed so far on this is absolute BS. And anybody with a brain and an internet connection can see it for what it is. Total pack of lies. I give you the truth. Our media lie to you constantly. I give you the truth. Unlike the media, though, I'm not well funded, and neither are the independent media outlets in the UK that are telling you the truth about this. And there are not many of them. Please click through to the website to find out ways you can support me and support independent media. It's the only way we're going to fight back against this BS that we're being told. Thanks very much for watching. Please make sure you subscribe. Please make sure you click the bell so you get a notification of when I drop further videos. And if you can, click through to the website to find out ways you can support me. Can't do this without your support, and I really do appreciate it. Thanks very much. Until next time. Peace and take care.